G'day there, ladies and ledians. Welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Links, where we connect the dots with theories. Today's episode is going to be focused on uncovering the secrets of Slowpoke life. We will be covering some things about it and its evolutions while introducing a theory that I don't think literally anyone has thought of before. But that's enough of an introduction. Let's talk about Slowpoke. Now, there isn't too much that's interesting about Slowpoke. It's not secretly a legendary or anything like that, but there is one notable thing about Slowpoke that everyone knows. It's that it needs Shoulder to evolve one way or another. The thing on Slowbro and Slowking is supposed to be a Shoulder. It's a Shoulder! Wow, did you know? It's a Shoulder! It's got poisonous glands that cause Slowking to be intelligent. Oh, and Coys are also like the tail, but don't let it fool you, it's a Shoulder. And also Gastrodon is Shoulder's cousin, and this is all too much, I think. There's a lot of info from the Pokédex about these Pokemon, and so I wouldn't blame you if you did think this thing is a Shoulder. Am I the only one that thinks that this isn't Shoulder? It might be a hot take, but my theory suggests that this quote-unquote Pokemon is not Shoulder. Now, if you are 100% certain it is Shoulder, then I don't think I can convince you. But if you are willing to explore these Pokemon dynamics and to question your understanding, then I welcome you to Pokemon Links. So, the reason why we may think that the tail thing on Slowbro, I'm just going to refer to it as fake Shoulder for simplicity. Anyway, we know it's a fake Shoulder from Slowbro and Slowking's Pokédex entries. It doesn't mention anything about fake Shoulder on Shoulder's side or on Slowpoke, it's just the evolutions. And if you have been on my channel long enough, you would know that I don't really take the Pokédex as the word of law. And so since I'm going to be ignoring that repeated fact about it being Shoulder, it's only fair that I ignore everything else and see what I have come up with based on my observations and some game data. The first thing that should be brought up is how Slowpoke evolves. It evolves at level 37 or by trading with King's Rock. We will get to Galarian Slowpoke later, but for now the focus is on regular Slowpoke. Now, nowhere does it mention that a Shoulder is involved, and there are a few reasons why. Firstly, it would be annoying to need two Pokemon so that one can evolve. And if the Pokédex is to be believed, the Shoulder would effectively get erased from your party, which sounds like an awful amount of pain and misery for the player, just for what is essentially a gimmick. Not only that, but it's also likely that there wasn't enough coding expertise or technology limitations that prevented this. Nowadays, Game Freak could probably put it together, but they are very protective about how Pokemon evolves. It's like one of the few things that is never changing about the Pokemon that are known for evolution. We do, however, have a similar evolution method in later generations. Gen 4 Mantine needs a Remoraid in the party to evolve into Mantine, but the Remoraid isn't deleted or anything. Gen 6 Pancham needs to have a party member with a Dark-type move to evolve into Pangoro, and while I could be making a theory on them, there isn't much to go off. Slowpoke and Shoulder have more of a connected history, which allows for more interesting discussions. So from a purely gameplay perspective, Shoulder is not on Slowbro's tail or Slowking's head. There is more to discuss, however, so let's continue. Another thing that is important for this relationship is that they would need to be in the same environments. Doing a little cross-referencing, Slowpoke and Shoulder are in the same spot only a handful of times, the main one being the Seafray Miles. For the most part, you don't find Slowpoke and Shoulder at the same spot. That's fine for Shoulder, it's got a life outside of munching on Slowpoke. But for Slowpoke, isn't that a big deal? It means that if we ignore the evolution method, most Slowpoke don't get to evolve. Slowpoke is their final form. It just feels weird to have an evolution dedicated to a Pokemon, and yet they don't live in the same locations. However, if Slowpoke is able to evolve in another way, then this could make sense. And so I think it's time that I talk about Slowpoke's biology a little bit. You see, Slowpoke is a very slow Pokemon. I think it's supposed to be a hippo, but anyway. The way it hunts could be that it stays in the water and just waiting for fish to swim in its mouth, but it being in the water could be a defensive thing from predators. It's more likely that it exists on land and uses its tail to fling fish in front of it on the ground, where it can then eat them. And so using its tail is fine, but I feel like it needs some bait-like element to attract prey. We also learned from Team Rocket that Slowpoke tails are very expensive, so perhaps there is something in the tail that makes sense. Now, the most likely reason for its tail being important is because it can store a special gland or substance that is possibly delicious, but also could be key to its evolution. One of the Pokédex entries say that the tail grows back, which really sounds like a retcon. Team Rocket selling them for an expensive amount feels kinda weird when they just grow back. At that point, just start up a Slowpoke farm. Ignoring that Dex entry so that the tails are permanent loss adds to the whole sequence. It becomes less of a bad thing if they just grow back, you know? And so with the tails having a gland, I think it makes sense that it's a fluid that's related to its psychic abilities. Not only would Slowpoke have a sweet tail attracting fish Pokemon, but any that get close and or realize what's about to happen still get lured in by the psychic powers coming from the tail. Okay, but how does this relate to its evolution? Well, for its fishing process, the tail gets pinched by the biting Pokemon. If it is a weak grip, it means that it gets fished up. If it's a tight grip, however, then the fluids in the tail start reacting. And here is the part of my theory that is a complete curveball. After the tail gets pinched hard, potentially from a surprise predator, the tail starts to create a silk-like substance around the caught predator. Perhaps at this point the predator Pokemon stops biting and can go back to whatever it was doing. The attractive nature of the tail switches to production mode, creating a thick shell-like cover over where the body was pinched. This means that instead of it being fake shoulder, it's actually just still a part of Slowpoke or Slowking, but there's more. It is possible that the shell tail on the typical Slowpoke or Slowking was a typical shoulder, causing a fake shoulder to look like that, but this theory also opens up the idea of multiple variations of fake shoulder. Like, if a Pokemon grabbed Slowpoke's tail really hard, the fake shoulder could look different. The King's Rock for Slowking could just be there to help with the structuring of the fake shoulder, as the fluid rushes from its tail to the top of its head, and the process allows for it to have a higher mental capacity. This theory also works for Galarian Slowpoke, allowing it to be on its arm instead. Combined with a Poison Flower, it makes sense. With Mega Slowbro, it doesn't make sense that the shoulder gets the majority of the transformation, but with this theory, that fake shoulder is a part of Slowbro. It's got Slowbro's DNA in it, so the Mega Stone affecting it makes more sense. It's also kind of awkward for the shoulder, right? Like, what does the shoulder get out of being attached to Slowpoke? Relocation? Then what, it just hops off the Slowpoke evolution? Does it change back? Does the Slowbro/King turn back into a Slowpoke? The fake shoulder literally being a shoulder opens up more questions than it answers. With my theory, it allows Slowpoke to evolve more naturally, has more of an emphasis on its tail, which adds to the Team Rocket and Azalea down encounter, and it doesn't require effectively erasing a Pokemon for it to evolve. It also opens up the designs for Slowbro and Slowking to have a variety of shells rather than the boring one that isn't even a shelled evolution. Unfortunately, I don't think I can change Game Freak's mind about the Pokemon they have designed over a quarter century, which is a shame because I would like some Pokemon's entries for Slowbro that don't have shoulder mentioned. Such a waste of text. Anyway, what do you think of this theory? Do you prefer my deductions, or do you prefer what Game Freak have done with these Pokemon? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching.